when you kind of lodge your application to when your actual cover goes into force, your idea would be that you're not covered in that time. The insurer hasn't approved your application, but there actually is something called interim cover.
As soon as one insurance company offers it, then the rest feel like, well, okay, how much is that actually going to cost us? And does it really matter?
That's probably one of the biggest causes of delays in the application process that we see. Maybe the doctor is quite overwhelmed and busy and just has other things that they need to be doing. I assume doctors are quite busy and have important things to do.
Talking about actually, can we maybe not require that? Because there's this balance between going, well, if we're waiting on a client for 5 days just to get their payment info, but we know they're not going to pay for the policy, can we move them into the application process as early as possible?
And he was diagnosed, I'm going to butcher this, with psoriatic arthritis.
Nailed it.
Thank you.
I have no idea if you did or not, but I'll be your cheerleader at least. Hey there, thank you for watching another deep dive episode. So we are talking today about what if you need to claim on your cover before your cover actually starts. So today we've got Azaria Bell, one of our awesome advisors, to take us through this. Thanks for joining me, Azaria.
Thanks for having me, Phil.
So let's start off. I'm always interested because one of the great things about these deep dives is you get to choose the topic. So why did you choose this topic?
Yeah, I chose this topic because a client reached out this week with a really good question. She's in the process of getting her insurance, so the application's going through at the moment, and it's a little bit delayed because the insurer needs some medical reports and the doctor's office, the practice manager, isn't there. So she reached out and asked, well, what if something happens in that time frame? Am I covered? And that kind of opened up a conversation about what's called interim cover, which I thought I'd share some more information on today.
Great. Now, what is interim cover?
So in the time when you kind of lodge your application to when your actual cover goes into force, your idea would be that you're not covered in that time. The insurer hasn't approved your application, but there actually is something called interim cover. And what it does, it's a kind of insurance that would cover you if anything would happen to you in that time frame as a result of an accident primarily. So if you were in a car accident, for example, your insurance hasn't yet gone into place, you might actually still be able to make a claim.
And is there a period of time where you're covered under this interim cover, or is it until your policy goes into force?
It's usually 90 days is the maximum limit. So if your application is taking really, really long, that interim cover may expire, but 90 days is generally the limit.
Okay, awesome. So talk to me about what does this typically cover?
Yeah, so as we touched on, it is really just accident. So sometimes the policies read a bit funny, but it is actually just accident. So accidental death, accidental total and permanent disability, an accident that leaves you unable to work, so like an income protection, and trauma insurance. We typically think of trauma insurance as serious illness covered. There actually is a few things under trauma that could be classed as resulting in an accident. So things like loss of hearing, loss of sight, major head trauma, paralysis. In those cases, you could claim on interim trauma insurance as well. But it does vary quite a bit from insurance companies to insurance companies. So there's usually limits. Let's say if you've applied for $5 million of life insurance, unfortunately, they're not going to pay you that $5 million under interim cover. That is generally capped at $1 million across the insurers, or whatever amount you applied for, whichever is less. So life insurance, that's usually what that one looks like. TPD varies quite a bit. So $1 million is the max with most of the insurance companies, some going down to as low as $500,000. And then we've also got trauma insurance as well. They're actually surprisingly quite high. So some offer up to $1 million, 750,000, 500,000. But probably the most interesting variation is income protection insurance. So a lot of our clients will be applying for income protection that could pay them until they're 65 years old. With interim cover, that's not so much the case. So income protection, that monthly payment is usually capped at either $10,000 or $5,000 a month. And you'll be able to claim on that for a maximum of 6 to 12 months, depending on the insurance company. So you couldn't be on a really long-term income protection claim under interim cover.
And, just like with all things insurance, it's all the T's and C's matter. So to claim on your actual cover, your cover needs to be put in force, the date it's in force, then you're covered. Things like trauma insurance, there are qualifying periods to be able to, you've got to have the cover for more than 3 months to claim on cancer. But talk to me about some of the nuances about when this interim cover starts, because I know different insurers have different kind of start dates for the interim cover.
Yeah, definitely. It actually does vary quite a bit. So some insurance companies, they'll cover you under interim cover as soon as they've received your application and the payment details. Whereas some insurers will require you to have filled out the personal statement or done the tele-interview, which is where they ask you a bunch of questions about your medical history and occupation. So it does vary depending on the insurance company.
Yeah, which is interesting because some insurance company, well, at the moment, there's one insurance company that's taking over a month to be able to book in a tele-interview. And so, yeah, some insurers will, only start the interim cover then, which, places extra risk, on those clients going through there. Is there any other differences or nuances between different insurers that is worth kind of addressing?
Yeah, there are. So, for example, there are a couple of insurance companies where interim cover doesn't apply if you already have cover that you're replacing. So, if you kind of adequately covered, let's say, with an insurance policy, but you're taking out a new one because it's going to be cheaper, if something happens to you in that interim period, the expectation is that you just rely on the cover that you already have and they wouldn't offer you the interim. Other insurers would reduce what they pay you by the cover that you already have. So that's another thing that can happen as well. And other insurers say that, well, whether or not they pay the interim cover is subject to what they would have actually offered after completing your underwriting. So let's say if your medical situation was really terrible and they would have declined it anyway, they may not pay out the interim cover. But again, it just depends on the insurance company. Another thing that a couple of insurers offer, which is quite interesting, anyone that's been through the process of getting retail insurance would know that once your policy is approved, sometimes it can take a little while before the insurer actually receives your insurance premium. Reason being is that a lot of these policies, you can actually pay for them through super. So the insurance company might be waiting for your super fund to send over some money to cover that premium. So some insurers actually offer interim cover for that. It's called interim rollover cover. It's about 30 days in that time where they're waiting to receive your premium. They'll still offer you some interim cover up until that point as well.
And is that different or is it the same interim cover? Because I actually had no idea that was a thing.
I believe it's pretty much the same. Yeah, exactly the same kind of accidents.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. So talk to me about why are insurance companies doing this? We all think that insurance companies are there to not pay claims. And so we're talking about, we haven't even done any underwriting, nothing. As soon as we apply for it, we are covered somewhat. So why are insurance companies doing this, do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question, Phil, because there's really I couldn't really think of any commercial benefit in insurance companies doing this. They don't really owe anyone anything until they've probably made their assessment. But my assumption would be that maybe a lot of that is kind of potential bad PR that could come from, let's say, for example, if the insurer is kind of taking a long time to approve an application, something horrific happens to someone they're left paralyzed, and the insurer doesn't help them at all. I think that could look really, really bad. So I imagine that's probably partially why they offer interim cover. I think the risk to the insurer is also quite low. Like it would be a lot higher if they were covering for illnesses and things like that as well. But the chances of someone being in an accident in that usually less than 3 months time frame is probably decently low. So it's a bit of goodwill from the insurance companies. Maybe there's a bit of also competing with other insurance companies. If one insurance company is offering that and the other isn't, maybe there's a bit more incentive to be a bit more competitive there. But I don't know. That's kind of my assumption. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a bit of that competitive, landscape. As soon as one insurance company offers it, then the rest feel like, well, okay, how much is that actually going to cost us? And, if it's really going to make up, sub 0.1% of claims, does it really matter? And I guess that's why they do limit their exposure. So if you're applying for $5 million worth of cover, the level of underwriting and medical assessments is far greater than $1 million. And so therefore it can take much longer, but they're limiting that exposure to the $1 million or $500,000 as you talked about. So that's probably my guess why they're doing it. And yeah, exactly your thoughts. Like at the end of the day, insurance companies, they pay out billions of dollars worth of claims, and they're in business to pay out claims when they're needed. But the perception is that insurance companies aren't paying out claims. So having that bad outcome for a client, well, I'm going for cover. It's not my fault I got hit by a bus. At least there is some goodwill there. So yeah, I kind of agree with you. But it's a question. Anytime I have questions for the insurance industry that I don't know the answer to, I love asking the insurers. So I'm actually going to reach out to some product teams and ask them, well, why do we actually do this? What's the history of it?
I'd love to know how many insurers have actually paid out for interim cover as well. That'd be quite interesting.
That would be interesting. And given it's accident only as well, like it's limiting the exposure. So if someone gets sick or has an issue, a health issue, a sickness, then they're not paying out on those claims as well. So all right, now let's talk about, this cover is good. It's better than nothing, but it's not full cover. We're not being covered and protected. So how do we avoid kind of this exposure between applying for cover and having some interim cover and getting the policy in force? Like, what do we do? And what do we kind of recommend for our clients?
Yeah, I think there are three parties at play when it comes to getting your insurance in place. So, firstly, us as the advisors, it's our job that, once you've filled out the forms, we're getting that application underway as soon as possible. We're facilitating that application and being that kind of middleman between the client and the insurers, is trying to make sure that happens as quickly as possible. There's obviously an obligation on the insurance company to act quite quickly and within a reasonable time frame and make sure everything's running smoothly there. But also there's a lot that the client can do as well to avoid being in a situation where they might need to be relying on interim cover. Firstly is just, well, submitting the application early. Obviously, there's a lot to think about when you're considering taking out insurance, and it is important that you take the time to consider your options, understand the policies, understand the contract, but try not to delay for too long because life does just happen. We've seen that plenty of times where people delay kind of going ahead with the application and then something happens in that time, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So yeah, not dilly-dallying too much when it comes to getting your insurance in place. Once the application is in place, if you can book your tele-interview, so that medical questionnaire phone call, as soon as possible, that's great. Because as we mentioned, some interim covers only kick in once you've had that phone call. So kind of prioritizing that as a matter of urgency, providing the payment details up front. So we do that as a part of when a client fills out the form, we ask for that payment information straight away.
And that's an interesting one because we require it before we submit it. But as a leadership team, we're talking about actually, can we maybe not require that? Because there's this balance between going, well, if we're waiting on a client for 5 days just to get their payment info, but we know they're not going to pay for the policy for 30, 60 days, can we move them into the application process as early as possible? So, for some insurers, they'll get interim cover earlier than they otherwise would. But for some clients, well, they're not going to get that interim cover until they provide that payment detail. So it's this balancing act because that we need to consider and the risk that we take on as Skye is making sure when we ask clients to sign everything and once they're comfortable going ahead, sign everything, do it straight away. Just get it all back to us so we can submit your application.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost, yeah, not an emergency, but the way I see being uninsured is it's a bit of an emergency. Let's work on that as soon as we possibly can. The other thing that can happen as well is often when insurers are assessing your application, they might need more information from your doctor. So they might request a medical report or something like that. That's probably one of the biggest causes of delays in the application process that we see. Maybe the doctor is quite overwhelmed and busy and just has other things that they need to be doing. I assume doctors are quite busy and have important things to do. So that can get pushed to the bottom of their queue to kind of provide that commentary and provide those reports. So sometimes what we've done in the past, if the doctor's office is really slow, we'll ask the client to actually call their doctor and say, hey, I'm trying to get insurance. Are you able to push this one forward? Because we can't talk to your doctor on your behalf. They can't release information to us. We're just a financial advisor at the end of the day. But often you can get involved and help push that one through a bit quicker. So that can help quite a bit too.
Yeah. And that's right. Yeah. You said there was kind of three, people involved, us, the insurer, and the clients, or the people who are applying for cover. But the fourth one is the medical practitioners. If we need a specialist report, that can sometimes take a while. And as the advisors, in terms of what we are responsible for, we work with the insurers if some of them are slow in requesting those medical reports. Well, we keep them accountable. If some insurers take a while to pay the bill before the doctor will have the report ready, but they charge a fee to the insurance company. So if it takes the insurance company a while to pay the bill before they will pay out, then that's on us and the insurer to make sure we're pushing them to get that done, and the insurer making sure they've got efficient processes. But yes, sometimes it is literally on the doctor's office. The bill's been paid and they're just not completing the work, and so. It is important for sometimes clients just jump in, give them a call, push it forward, because the clients are the doctor's clients, and so they it's better than an insurance company calling them up and and hassling them for the fifth time.
Yeah, exactly. We've even had it in the past where doctors are taking ages to provide like a certain report to the insurer. The client will call up and ask the reception, "Hey, can you send this report about me to me directly?" They'll do
Mm.
that very quickly, and then the client will just send it to the insurance company. So sometimes there's ways around it as well.
Yeah, yeah. So talk to me about examples. What examples have we seen that, as to why it's important not to rely on this cover, but to make sure we are moving through the application in a reasonable pace?
Yeah, we have quite a few examples. A couple of standout ones that I thought about just before we jumped on was one of the advisors, Kat. She had a really sad case, actually. She was in the process of helping someone get their insurance, and with that insurance was included child cover. So, child cover is essentially like a trauma insurance or a life insurance policy, but for the child. So, if they were diagnosed with a serious illness, they'd receive a lump sum of money to allow that parent to kind of, take time off work, cover medical expenses and things like that. So they were partway through the application, they were close to the end. But what Kat said is that that client, when in the middle of applying for cover, noticed that their child had developed a rash. So they took the child to the doctor, and shockingly, what that actually revealed was that that child had leukemia. They had to relocate interstate for treatment for the child, and likely they'll be going through that treatment for about a year. And unfortunately, yeah, that child cover wasn't yet in place, which meant that they weren't able to access any support in that situation. And this isn't necessarily about interim cover, because interim cover in that case wouldn't have applied either. You can get interim child cover, usually capped at about $20,000, but again, it's mainly just for accidents. But that was just a case where if things had moved a bit quicker, then potentially that client might have been able to access some financial support, which is really unfortunate. The other case we had was one of my clients. So, again, going through the application process, it looked like everything was going to be fine. I think he was going to get an exclusion for football or something like that. But during that process, he actually went to see a rheumatologist because he was having some symptoms, and he was diagnosed, and I'm going to butcher this, with psoriatic arthritis. So
Nailed it.
thank you. We'll
I
go
have
with
no idea if you did or not, but I'll be your cheerleader at least.
if that was the wrong pronunciation, it's now the right pronunciation. We're just going to
Yeah.
go with that. But yeah, essentially, he was diagnosed with this condition. It's not a super serious condition in most cases, but it really is just the recency of the diagnosis. He needed to be trialing different medications to get the symptoms managed properly. So the insurers actually declined his application. What we did instead is we went ahead and applied for accident only cover, which doesn't look at medical history to such a great degree. So he's got some accident cover in place. It's been about 18 months now, and we're just about to start researching to see if we can get him standard insurance again. But yeah, that was, again, with all our clients, when they're going through this process, they really value financial security. They really value having insurance. So any kind of delays in getting that can create a bit of anxiety, but hopefully we'll get that sorted out for that client soon.
Yeah. And it's this whole thing is about, these unlucky scenarios that happen while during the application, and they're very rare, but it kind of goes to the point of like insurance is so important, very, very rarely urgent. As a business, one of the things that we do really well, and maybe we could do differently, is we respect our clients' decisions. They're adults. We understand that these insurances cost money, and you're an adult. You make an informed decision whether you take out the cover or not. If you delay the process, well, you make an informed decision we understand life happens. But at the end of the day, insurance is so important, and you need it most when you go through a claim, and no one knows what's happening in the future and when I need that, when I'm going to claim on it. So it's just a reminder to, anyone watching, if it's been on your to-do list for a while, and to be perfectly honest, I'm talking to myself right now because I've got to increase my life in TBD and it's been on my to-do list. If it's on your to-do list, go and do it, because, it's never an urgent thing to get done. And it's really unfortunate the clients had these incidents through, between an application, but probably, I could count probably 50 people who I've spoken to who have talked to us after a health event. I got a message from a really good friend the other day saying, oh, someone reached out to me to get insurance because they've just been diagnosed with cancer. And it's like, well, unfortunately, we can't we can't insure our cars, the day after we have a car crash. And it's the same when it comes to these life insurance covers. So my big plea is, if you've thought about doing this and you haven't yet, because, whatever the kids are, got school projects that I've got to help them with, or, life admin happens, it's really important to make sure we focus on these things.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
All right. So, Azaria, thank you very much. Is there anything else about the interim cover that we haven't touched on so far, or anything you kind of want to make sure that people watching this really, take note of?
No, I probably just, want to drive the idea home that if you're applying for insurance, let's try and get that done as quickly as possible. Interim cover does help. It does give you some level of protection, but it's not what you're ultimately aiming for. You want your cover to protect you for accidents, injuries, illnesses, whatever life might throw at you. So yeah, it's a good safety net, but it's not everything. So let's try and get you insured as soon as we can.
Yeah. And I like what you said is interim cover is not a bridge. It is a bridge and it's not the destination.
Yes.
I like it. And I was going to go on a tangent about me watching The Truman Show, which I won't, because they've got a bridge that goes to nowhere. But
so quite literally.
it's not the same. So that's it. It's not a bridge. It is a bridge. I keep on butchering it. It is the bridge. All right, Azza, thank you very much for taking the time to research this topic, and you've done heaps of research, reading all the PDSs to bring us this. So I appreciate you taking the time and running us through what interim cover is.
Thanks so much, Phil.